Donald Trump announced that he would reinstate the use of the death penalty at the federal level following his inauguration, in response to Joe Biden's decision to commute the death sentences of 37 inmates to life imprisonment. Trump emphasized the importance of restoring law and order to protect Americans from dangerous criminals, reports The Washington Times.
As we discussed a few days ago, Biden pardoned 37 out of 40 individuals sentenced to death under federal jurisdiction. This does not mean that the death penalty has been abolished in the United States altogether. Rather, Biden, citing his Catholic religious principles, has moved to end the federal death penalty. During his presidency, he announced a moratorium on executions, and now efforts are underway to repeal it. This is part of an ongoing debate between Democrats and Republicans, conservatives and liberals in America. Should the death penalty exist or not? In Europe, the death penalty is prohibited, while in most states of the U.S. it is allowed. From the perspective of religious conservatives, the death penalty is seen as natural retribution. If the families of victims cannot exact vengeance themselves, the state should act on their behalf, as some Americans believe. Incidentally, numerous interviews were recently given by people who felt confused or outraged that the killers of their family members were pardoned by Biden. Biden attempts to frame this as a moral dilemma. However, as with many of his actions, critics argue that it turns into a failure. He is presenting it as a moral issue. Why? Because 3 individuals were not pardoned? I can understand and even respect a principled position. I oppose the death penalty entirely. For me, this stance is both a legal and deeply personal matter. It is rooted in religious beliefs. The fact that Biden pardoned 37 but left 3 unpardoned shows that this is not a purely religious position. It is a political move aimed at earning sympathy and scoring points. If it were a religious stance, it would be consistent. This inconsistency undermines his argument. Meanwhile, former President Trump, a conservative trying to maintain that image, has stated that he will demand the death penalty and use it more frequently than it was used before his tenure. This highlights the key difference between the 2 presidents.
Wall Street Journal reports that despite promises to reconsider political donations following the events of January 6th, 11 companies are allocating $1 million each for Donald Trump's inauguration. Among the other major donors are Goldman Sachs, General Motors, Bank of America, AT&T, AT and NTT, as well as Stanley, Black & Decker. These companies previously suspended donations or limited support, but have now resumed funding, explaining their decision as part of the tradition of participating in inaugurations regardless of party affiliation. Donald Trump profits from elections through his family business, which offers New Year's merchandise. The Trump store sells an advent calendar for $38, Mar-a-Lago ornaments for $95, MAGA-themed New Year's magnets for $16, and much more, according to The Washington Post.
It is quite clear that most American companies now want to maintain good relations with Trump. This is not only because they fear the persecution of Trump supporters, who attempt to portray Democrats in a negative light, but also because it is popular. Trump is highly popular in America. The entire history of America is a story about an underdog, someone who was wronged, knocked down, and then rose again in the final round. This is why Trump's popularity is so high. It sounds absurd because just 2 months ago, he was considered a fascist who had ruined America. Now his supporters are flocking to his nest. This shows that Americans love this classic Hollywood narrative. It's a second wind story. Everyone is familiar with countless American films on this theme. Trump arguably is the loudest and most famous example, a phoenix rising from the ashes, 5 or 6 criminal investigations, over 100 criminal charges, 3 or 4 property claims. In other words, Trump was supposedly destroyed, but, like a mythical hero, he rose from the ashes. And Americans love this. In fact, anyone with common sense finds it inspiring. Here's a man who was metaphorically shot repeatedly and overcame enormous obstacles to claim his position. Whether one agrees with him or not is irrelevant. This kind of resilience resonates with Americans. It is obvious that Americans are buying his merchandise. Unfortunately for Trump, though, this does not necessarily reflect political allegiance. At the airport where I am currently located, MAGA slippers and other merchandise are everywhere. This is not because San Francisco has suddenly become pro-Trump, but simply because it's profitable. And how does Washington comment on this? For instance, the Washington Post, a Democratic-leaning publication, tries to frame this as Trump capitalizing on his popularity. They suggest he wants to become president to profit from this fame. However, they avoid directly calling it a cash grab, leaving readers to infer this from their articles. The problem is that Trump has lost hundreds of millions of dollars due to legal actions. If Trump was solely focused on profit, he could have avoided such losses. Accusing Trump of running for president purely for financial gain is therefore the height of absurdity. Trump may be running for various reasons, narcissism, a desire to save America, or something else, but it is definitely not to make money, as he has lost hundreds of millions overall. And this is what the Washington Post neglects to mention.
The Washington Examiner reports that House Democrats are proposing changes to their media strategy following losses in the 2024 elections. They are calling for more active use of conservative platforms to expand their audience reach. Lawmakers emphasize the need to communicate their ideas even in politically hostile environments to attract voters who do not consume traditional news.
Democrats, the party of progress, suddenly discovered that conservatives, the old-fashioned group, the party of rednecks, thick-headed Americans who don't understand what they're voting for, had surpassed them in using social media for political purposes. How could this have happened? The answer is quite straightforward. The Republican Party is far from the demographic caricature that Democrats try to impose on them. This isn't a battle of brute force, it's a battle of good versus the forces of socialism in a free market. The free market is highly adaptable to technology, therefore there's nothing surprising about this. Thank you for watching part of our morning news broadcast on the Sergey channel. To watch the full episode, click below to the right. To subscribe, click above. See you in the next episodes.